Welcome to the Sales Lead Dog Podcast, hosted by CRM technology and sales process expert Christopher Smith, talking with sales leaders that have separated themselves from the rest of the pack. Listen to find out how the best of the best achieve success with their team and CRM technology. And remember, unless you are the lead dog, the view never changes.
Welcome to Sales Lead Dog. Joining me for today's episode is Mike Wickham of SDTech. Mike, welcome to Sales Lead Dog.
Good to see everybody. How are you?
Mike, it's good to see you. Tell me a bit about SDTech.
Sure. We're a San Antonio-based IT services company. Been in business for just shy of 25 years. Serve mainly the greater Central Texas area, but we do have customers nationwide. And we like to think of ourselves as a one-stop shop for all things technology for businesses, everything from controlled access doors to surveillance cameras and all things related to computers, software, cybersecurity, cloud services, telephone systems, whatever. So one phone call and we'll get it all set up for your office. If it's broken, we'll fix it. And if you don't have it, we can put it in.
What's the biggest area of growth for you guys right now?
Well, part of it is the growth around San Antonio. I mean, those people that don't live in Texas don't understand the influx of people coming in from all over the country. San Antonio is due to have over 1 million people move into the Austin-San Antonio corridor between now and 2030, according to the city manager. And so there's a tremendous growth here in terms of small business, because San Antonio is primarily a small business town, meaning under 200 employees. And so there's a lot of law firms, a lot of small manufacturing, a lot of technology companies. It's a big cybersecurity hub. So there's an awful lot of things going on in San Antonio proper. So it's keeping us pretty busy.
Oh, I bet. And I've been to that part of Texas a lot over the years, and the growth over the last 10 years is just unbelievable.
Yeah, it's astounding.
Yeah, it really is. It's unreal. So Mike, when you look back over your career and you had to sum things up into 3 things that have really driven your success, what would those 3 things be?
Curiosity, first of all. I've always been curious about what people do, why they do it, and how they do it. The second thing is some of my background from being a West Point graduate is that to be prepared to understand what you have to do properly and do it with energy and fervor. And the last thing is to have a tremendous amount of integrity, because that sets the tone for what you do going forward in sales. Is if people can't trust you, they don't buy from you.
I'm huge on that. Like, you always have to be acting with integrity, because number one, people just know, if they don't know right away, they're going to know eventually.
Sure.
And you're
Yeah.
toast. And it's all about relationships, right?
Well, I get a big kick out of meeting people. I started my life growing up as a military brat. At 4 years old, I started traveling. And so far, I've been to 80 countries around the world for a lot of different reasons, personal and professional. And meeting different people and getting to know people's story has always been very interesting to me. So that translates very well into sales, because I very much like to talk to people and get inside their head to see, what makes them tick and what motivates them. And so how can I help that help them move forward? The old Zig Ziglar, was it Zig Ziglar that said, if you do things right by people, then things will come well to you, or however that phrase went?
Yeah. I'm a big believer in that too. Now, did you always want to be in sales, or is that something that you evolved into?
No, I like I say, when I got out of the academy, I ended up in the Army, and I thought I was going to have a career in the Army. And when that plan didn't work out for a variety of reasons, I ended up getting into working in the telecommunications field and in an international business development role. And then from that, it just launched into 30 years now of doing sales and business development. And I like it because it has a lot of flexibility, and it provides me an opportunity to know enough about things technically, but not have to actually plug things into the wall or write code. I always say I'm not the guy you want for that, but to be able to go into a business, solve problems from a technical standpoint, and see that success is what motivated me to continue in the field. And it's always been technology, and it's always been in the sales and business development role. And I just enjoy that.
Yeah. Now, you started working internationally, correct? How did working internationally build the foundation that you're working from now?
Part of it was two things. The people that you deal with in international business tend to be highly educated, highly motivated, very creative people. And so that ups my game. So when I first got out there as a fresh out of the Army lieutenant or captain at the time, and then all of a sudden now I'm doing international business and telecommunications, I really had to up my game because these people I was dealing with, again, educated, creative, and sharp folks. And so that basis kind of set the tone for the next level when I came back to do domestic work, or when I continued to do international work. I always knew that in front of me were someone that would be a challenge. And so I always had to stay on my game to do that. And it's helped throughout the 20 or 30 years that I've been chasing that brass ring.
Yeah. Was it an easy transition for you into sales, or did it come naturally?
I don't say it was. It wasn't hard because, again, I've always been a curious person and I've always asked a lot of questions of people. So I always felt like I wasn't trying to sell anybody something. I was just talking to them and figuring out what do they want and what do they not want. And I've always fancied myself a good listener. And so I could always pivot off of whatever I heard. And then that helped me, go forward with getting the contract signed, getting the deals done, because I wasn't trying to push something on somebody. I was trying to actually understand what they wanted and try to see if I had something that would fit that problem or fit that mold. If it did, fine. If it didn't, I was very happy to walk away and say so. And that also helped me because I wasn't trying to push something on my potential clients.
Do you have any, I don't necessarily want to say failure, but it's those, I prefer to think of them instead of failure as lessons learned, because I think that is the best opportunity to learn is when we're falling on our face. But do you have any lessons learned from that time early in your career that you're still leveraging today?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the biggest thing about that is to not be afraid to fail. Because it's like what's the old Thomas Edison thing? He made 1,000 light bulbs before he got one to work. It's kind of the same thing in sales, is that if you don't fail, you don't know what you're doing wrong. But the corollary to that is when you do fail, don't repeat the same mistake. Do something different, pivot, go on to, try to figure out, do the after action report and say, okay, what did I do wrong and how can I fix it? How do I make it better? And obviously there's numerous times in the course of a sales career where the contracts didn't come through for whatever reason. You were late, had the wrong items, you had the wrong pricing, you dealing with the wrong people, whatever it might be. But the trick is learn from that mistake and hopefully not do it again, or don't do it again often, put it that way. Because quite often you're going to repeat some of the mistakes you make. But I guess that's the biggest thing is, can I point to one big failure that I learned from? No, but it's a question of every time I fell on my face, did I pick myself up, dust myself off, figure out why I was on my butt, and then carry on from there.
Yeah, that's the figure out why I'm on my butt. That's the important part, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell me about your transition into leadership. How did that happen? Did they just come up and tap you on the shoulder and say, "Hey, Mike, this is something we think you should consider"? Or is it something you pursued on your own?
It kind of happened, I want to say organically. Again, graduated from West Point, went into the Army. I was a unit commander, so I was trained to be a leader.
Yeah.
And when I got into the business world, the people that hired me, they knew that pedigree and they said, we're not going to have you go through, the stuff you've already been through. We're going to drop you into something with some responsibility. Do with it what you need to do. And so the first job I had, I was working actually at MCI International, which no longer exists. It's been absorbed a couple of different times. I think it's now it was Sprint and now it's whatever Sprint became.
It's impossible to keep track
Yeah.
of all the way.
Anyway,
I used to do consulting and telecommunications back in the day.
Oh, it's impossible.
They're all so many different names now.
But they basically gave me a region of the world and said, okay, we have a problem here. Figure out what the problem is, figure out a solution, wrap yourself around the people that are there, bring on staff that's going to help you accomplish this. And oh, by the way, bring us back some, positive revenue in 18 months. Yeah. And that became sort of the prototype of my career because I got sent out all over the world to take a product or a service, identify a potential market, do the market analysis, then go out to that market, find representation, train that representation to sell, service, and support whatever it was.
Right.
And then again, 18 months bring us back some profitable revenue. And it was a lot of fun. I had great fun doing that over and over and over again. And the funny thing is all the stuff that I was sent out to do at that time, and this is going back 30 years, is the stuff we use today as just a matter of course.
Yeah.
So it's fun to look back on that and to say I test drove, voice over the internet in Puerto Rico in 1987, or something like that.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And now people don't even think about it. They don't even think that a landline is anywhere near useful at this point.
Right. Yeah. So you were really truly a sales leader right at the beginning, because you had to go into a market, you had to figure out the messaging, the value prop, all of that. You had to build a team,
Yep.
train them, educate them, and drive execution, and
Yep.
do it, rinse and repeat, do it over and over again.
Yeah, I was typically the suit. I was working out of the New York City area at the time. Most of my career was spent up as home base up in the New York City area. So I was typically the suit out of New York coming in and, basically trying to upend everything.
Right.
And so I had the reputation of being the suit out of New York, but at the same time I had to go down there and actually get my hands dirty and do the development to build those teams and build those marketplaces. And so it was a lot of fun, great learning experience, lifelong friends, and had a lot of fun in the process.
That's pretty cool. What are your key takeaways from that experience in terms, like, when you think about what you're doing to build a team, get them functioning, get them executing, and then also leveraging that to identify who are people that we can take to the next level as maybe potential future leaders?
Yeah, the first thing is I always say I always tried to surround myself with people that were smarter and better than I was. And I knew my limitations in terms of the technology and in terms of, writing contracts and all that. So there was always a technical guy, an accountant, and a lawyer that went with me everywhere because I had to cut deals all the time and do things. And so if you surround yourself with people that are better than you, and you learn how to manage them, you can do great things. And then if you show them that you're willing to do that type of stuff and they have the aptitude or the desire to take your place, then let them do that, because that's your succession process that you always have to have in any organization, because no one's going to be there forever.
Right.
And then the last thing I'd say is once you've established a team and once you've established a process, trust it, trust the people in it, and trust the process, and also be willing to reevaluate and say, okay, something's working, something's not working. Fix the stuff that's broken, leave the stuff that's working alone.
Yeah. So let's talk about the fix the things that are broken. Do you have a certain approach or methodology you'd like to leverage when you're addressing those issues?
Frankness. I mean, too many people try to either couch it in diplomacy or somehow hide the fact that something's broken. I think the better approach is just to identify it outright and put it right in people's faces and say, okay, we all own this. And so now what do we do?
Yeah.
And I may have the final authority to say yes or no to a given solution, but I never go into a situation where I'm the only one that I consider to have the solution. I always seek everyone else. I used to say this in the Army: if someone came into my office with a problem, you better have a solution or you're going right back out the door.
Yeah.
And so when I got into my civilian career, I did the same thing. Is that whenever my team, whether they worked for me or whether they were representatives, third-party folks, said the same thing. If there's a problem, then what are your two options for a solution? And let's figure it out. And
Yeah.
so it puts a responsibility on everyone in the organization. So if everybody has responsibility for something, it's a lot easier to get things done.
Oh yeah, that used to drive me crazy. I learned that lesson early on in my career, that when I had team coming in dumping problems on my desk, I learned very quickly. Yeah, you bet if you're dumping that on my desk, it better come along with some solutions that we can work on.
Yeah, whining is easy.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, we're not going to move things forward if you're just constantly dumping things on my desk. Everyone has to take ownership to make things better. It's not just tossing over the wall saying, hey, figure this out. Let me know once you've got the solution. That doesn't work. I mean, you can come up with a solution, but it's not going to be as good as if you're collaborating.
Mhm.
Yeah. What are the things that the red flags or those warning signs that might be going off when you have a team member that maybe they need to, have some help or some counseling, something to say, hey, look, this isn't working. Are there specific things you're looking for?
Well, I mean, sales, as you know, is data driven. So if you see performance drop off, then you have to jump on top of that and figure out, okay, what's going on? Is it personal? Is it professional? Is it both? I think the second thing is interaction with the rest of the team. If communication breaks down, you got to figure out why, because that's the death knell for most organizations when they're not talking to each other. And the other thing is, if people seem to be going off the rails, part of it I used to go is make sure we reconnect and say, do you understand which way we're supposed to be going? Do you understand what we're trying to accomplish in a week, in a month, in a year, whatever it is?
Yeah.
Because sometimes they just lose sight of that, and then all of a sudden they're left to their own devices, and it's like, okay, now what? You're doing the wrong thing for the organization.
Yeah.
So I always try to keep an ear to the ground, ear to the ground, and say, okay, what's going on within the organization? Talk to everybody. What's that old adage, management by wandering around? I mean, I like to get involved with the people out there and get not necessarily personal with them, because I don't want to be their friend necessarily. I am the manager. I am the leader of the group, but maintain a relationship with them so that they understand I actually do care what's going on with them, and I do want to see them succeed. And the only way I can do that is if, one, we communicate, and secondly, they understand what my expectation is. Because if you don't understand what the leader's expectation is, you can't perform to that expectation.
Right. What do you do to help? We're talking about cultivating these future leaders. Do you like to mentor? Do you like to have structure in how you're doing this, or do you approach it more ad hoc?
Sometimes both. I mean, it depends on the organization. When I worked for large organizations, there was an entire curriculum that they'd have to go through in order to reach the next level.
Right.
When I worked for entrepreneurial firms that were much flatter, then it was more of an ad hoc type of a thing. But if I see someone who has the potential to be leadership, then the easiest way to get them on that path is to give them tasks to prove themselves, and to let them gain confidence in taking on bigger and bigger tasks with either more monetary responsibility, more staff responsibility, more project responsibility, the scope of the project. And when you do that, you'll find the people that will shine and bubble to the top. You'll also find people that reach a limit because they're either scared or they're not comfortable with their own capabilities. And so the easiest way and the most effective way in my mind to develop leadership is to dive in, throw them in the pool, see if they can swim.
Yep. What advice do you give to young leaders, first-time leaders?
I reflect on the first day I walked into the Army as a second lieutenant. At the end of the first day, the first sergeant, I don't know what your background is, but the first sergeant is the highest ranking enlisted man. And then in my case, I was in the artillery. The chief of fire and battery is this number two. And I called them both into my office. And I closed the door behind me. And their immediate reaction was, okay, here comes another butter bar that's going to tell us how to run the Army.
Yeah.
And I looked at the first sergeant and I said, Top, how many years do you have in service? He said 26, whatever the number was.
Yeah.
I said, Smoke, how many do you have? He said 24. I said, so between you have 50 years of experience. I have 6 months. I said, I'm going to soak you guys for 50 years worth of experience. Is that okay? Yeah. And, respect of seniority to me is one of the ways for a young leader to understand how to get to the next level. Don't think you come in with the answers. Don't be arrogant. Be firm, but don't be arrogant. Learn from the people who have done it before and follow the good stuff and stay away from the bad stuff.
Yeah. I love that story. What did they say, or did their expression change?
Or? Oh yeah. Those guys, they didn't give away their reaction.
Right.
Because I was the lieutenant.
Yeah.
But for the next 4 years, they covered my butt like you would not believe.
Yeah. That's what you need, right?
Yeah.
Because you're going to be falling on your face left and right.
Oh, they protected me for the next 4 years until I rotated out. Those guys had my back for everything.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that, it's like you made yourself vulnerable, not afraid to ask for help and guidance. To me, that's like a foundation of being a good leader. Is like, hey, look, I don't have all the answers. I've got humility. I'm new at this. I need help.
Yeah, I'm here to sign the paperwork and make the actual decisions in front of everybody, but you guys are the ones I'm relying on.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's key. I think it's absolute key. And I think the other thing, I just had this conversation with one of my siblings earlier today where, she's an executive in finance at a large hospital on the East Coast. And she was talking about cultivating her team and getting feedback from her team. And, I shared with her, like, one of my struggles is delegation, that I think a lot of leaders struggle with this where they think that, hey, I'll tackle the toughest problems.
Mhm.
But every time you do that, you're robbing your
Right.
team from a learning experience.
And you're affecting efficiency as well, because
Exactly.
you have to delegate. You have to put other people responsible for action. And then it's the old span of control. I mean, you can only keep track of 6 things.
Yeah.
And if you have more than that on your plate, then something's going to fail.
Yeah.
And too many people want to they want to do, not show.
Yeah.
And that just creates all kinds of problems within an organization, because as soon as you do that, the underlings, they don't want to do anything because they know you're going to step in and do it anyway.
Oh, no, exactly. That's the exact story I told. Like, I realized, hey, I'm becoming a center of gravity here
Yeah.
where the team's, oh, Chris is going to tackle it. I don't need to worry about it. And I surprise people. I'm like, hey, you've got this. And then all of a sudden they're like, what? Wait, now
Yeah.
they have to pay attention.
Right.
They're asking all these questions. And, it's like, hey, like, we're going to make a cultural change here that Chris isn't
And
going
you,
to be the
Chris, you
one.
talk about questions. Too many people are so afraid of quote unquote looking stupid.
Yes.
And it fascinates me because I've never been one not to ask a question. And even in high profile environments, just because I know somebody else in the room, if I didn't get
Oh,
it,
yeah.
somebody else in the room didn't get it either.
Yeah.
And I'm perfectly happy to be the target of everyone's scorn because I asked the question they were thinking about. And
Yeah.
so you tell people all the time, if you got something on your mind, put it out there.
Yeah. When we do trainings, that's the mantra is like, we ask people, like, please ask questions. Cause I guarantee you, if you have the question, there's at least 3 other people
Yeah,
on this
absolutely.
call that have the same question. So you're helping the whole team by asking the questions. And and that usually when the first person gets that question, it gets that, okay, we're safe. We can ask questions
Yeah,
too. No one's
yeah,
laughing at me or whatever, but that is a cultural thing that, I've had to beat into my team that it's like, guys, we can't be afraid to ask questions
yeah.
because eventually, like, if we try to fumble our way through and we're spinning our wheels, where if we would have just asked a question, then we can move right on.
Hmm.
I mean, come on, there's no pride in trying to be the smartest person, or there's nothing smart about being the smartest person or trying to be the smartest person in the room.
Right.
Ask the questions, let's move it forward. So,
I
yeah.
mean, you read those stories where major events have gotten screwed up because nobody said it was Eastern time versus Mountain time.
Yeah.
It's like that. Why not clear that up before? Now
Oh,
we've
yeah.
missed the
Yeah.
window by 3 hours or whatever it is.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Or it's like, it just drives me crazy. I'm like, well, I didn't really understand, but I thought I could figure it out. Just
Well,
ask
didn't
a
they didn't they
question.
didn't they crash? Didn't they crash like a Mars rover because they measured in meters and not feet?
Oh,
And
I don't know. That
the
sounds,
calculation was put in wrong, and it just
oh,
crashed
yeah.
right into the ground because they calculated the wrong. You
Yeah.
know,
It's like,
ask the question.
ask questions and ask it again a different way.
Yeah.
Um, it's, yeah, I've learned those lessons the hard way for sure. Um, uh, what does success look like for you with a team? How do you define success for your team?
Well, obviously, if you hit the metrics that are there, sure, that's successful.
Yeah.
To me, it's if everybody enjoys what they do, so they get to work early. It's not drudgery.
Yeah.
And if you have an environment where people feel like they want to be there, and there's a smile on their face, and there's a lilt in their step, that to me is success. And most of the organizations that I've been privileged to lead and to manage and to create, I've had people come back to me and say, we've done more with this organization, even though they don't work as an employee, because I set the tone of saying, let's all get in this together and let's all benefit from it. And so nobody felt like it was drudgery to come to work. They just liked what they did. They looked forward to what's the next project we get to tackle.
Yeah.
And that to me is the measure of success regardless. I mean, if you have that kind of environment, then the financial stuff will take care of itself because people will be doing what they need to be doing.
That's right. That's right. I like that definition. I'm always interested when people, it is when you're in sales, you're always measured by the numbers, but I truly think you have to go well beyond the numbers to get to what's really driving those numbers.
Well, I tell people all the time because I have, one of my grandsons is 22 and I deal with a lot of younger people for different reasons. And I always tell them, I said, don't chase the money.
Yeah.
Because, personally, I've worked in jobs where I've made a lot of money, but I couldn't stand going to work.
Yeah.
I couldn't get out of there fast enough.
Yeah.
And so you do something you enjoy and the money will get there. It may not get there tomorrow, but it'll get there.
Yeah.
But too many people right now are hung up on the cash. What's my salary? What's my bonus look like? Am I driving the right car? Am I wearing the right watch? It's like, no. That means absolutely nothing.
Yeah. No, I remember early on, I wanted to be a vice president like so fast. And because I thought, oh, then I've made it. I'm a VP. And with no clue what that really means, what really comes along with that, and what's the sacrifices you have to be willing to endure, to have this exterior image when it's really what's on the inside that matters. Yeah. If you look back over your career, I'm sure we all have regrets or things that maybe we would have liked to have done differently. Is there anything major for you that you're like, geez, I kind of wish I went in this direction instead of this direction?
The only one that comes to mind is when I was at the end of my command in the Army, I wanted to become a Russian defense analyst. I wanted to go learn how to speak Russian and get a master's degree in international relations.
Yeah.
And the Army told me no. And
Yeah.
so that was disappointing because I really wanted to do that. And I thought that would be really interesting, challenging, a cool thing to put on the resume because I'd work in Moscow or someplace else, some exotic location. But as it turned out, that quote unquote failure launched me into a 30-year career in international business, which was fantastic.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it was disappointing because I didn't do the thing, I didn't become an astronaut like I wanted to become, but
Yeah.
the alternative turned out to be pretty okay as well.
Oh yeah, no, that's the part. I get those same kind of crossroads where you're thinking like, this is the one I want, the path I want to be on. But I look back and like now, because I'm much older and wiser now, right? I look back and like, man, I'm not sure that would have been such a great path for me. I've had a pretty good life, going down the path I'm on.
That's that whole theory of gratitude. Be grateful for what you have.
Oh, totally.
The path took you here. So
yeah. I remember when I sold my first company, I took a sabbatical for a year and finished up grad school. And then I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. And my brother came to me and said, hey, I know you're probably not interested in doing this, but we need people for this. They were doing a large ERP implementation, across the country. It's a huge project. And he's like, I think you'd be really good at it. If you're interested, I can get you an interview. And so I'm like, I don't know anything about ERP. I don't know anything about manufacturing. Yeah, I'll give it a shot. That was like some of the happiest 2 years of my life doing that gig. I loved that project and the stuff I was doing because I was completely pushed out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
I was learning new stuff all the time. I love that period, and it's like I look back and I'm like, thank God I took that leap.
Yeah, fortunately, I've had a couple of different stints in business where either the job I was doing or the company I worked for, the people I worked with are just great memories, and probably for a good solid 10, 12 years and with a couple of different companies.
Yeah.
And that's a real nice thing to look back on because it's a great comfort to know that you got a chance to experience that stuff.
Oh yeah, big time, big time. Shifting gears a little bit, CRM, do you love it or do you hate it?
Yes and yes.
I like that answer.
I say that because, the CRM, regardless of which one you pick,
Yeah,
from the smallest, working off an Excel spreadsheet or doing something with one of the big ones,
yeah,
it's only as good as what you put in it and who manages it.
that's right.
And so, are they effective? Absolutely, they're effective. People will use them when they're trained on them for 6 weeks. And then after that, it becomes uncomfortable. It becomes an intrusion on the day. And then that's when the data falls off. And that's when the data that comes out, the manager's looking at the data from the CRM, it's pretty much useless.
Yeah,
And the other problem is that too many people get in there and put their fingers on stuff and change things. And next thing you know, the whole thing is screwed up.
yeah,
So it's a very difficult. Are they effective? Absolutely. Whether you're one of the unknown CRMs or whether you're one of the big players, it all works well because it helps you manage your customer base. It helps a lot of time efficiency. It helps a lot of institutional memory, all that stuff. But the problem is I've yet to be in an organization where it lasts more than about 6 weeks of effectiveness, and then it just turns into a many-headed hydra that nobody can fix.
yeah. I see that all the time. In my what I've learned over the years that I've been doing this is that oftentimes people come to us like, "Hey, we need CRM," and I always want to know why. What are you hoping to get out of CRM? And if I'm hearing things like, "Well, our sales process is horrible," I'm hoping if we get a CRM, it'll fix the issues with our sales process. Or we have horrible data. I'm hoping it'll fix the issues with our data. What I try to educate people on is, look, there's not a technology out there that will fix bad process. You have to
Mhm.
address that outside of the system. And the same thing with data. There's got to be a culture around data. It's an asset of the company. It needs to be treated that way.
Yeah.
And I think the best way to do that is by aligning and attaching your CRM to whatever key initiatives you're doing to drive against your strategic goals.
Well, the
That's
other
why.
thing, and I
Yeah,
don't disagree with any of that. I think, but personally, I think the easiest way for me to maintain a longer term effectiveness of a CRM is to require as little as possible from the sales staff.
yes,
Because, and again, I'm in the computer field. And so the single weakest link in the computer field is the human.
yes,
And so if you get the sales team only having to do minimal task and you put that into the weekly schedule or the biweekly schedule of a sales team's management, then you will get a reasonable amount of data. But if you expect them to do multiple tasks and do all sorts of derivations within a CRM, that's a prescription for failure. And I wouldn't even give you 6 weeks. I'd give you 3.
no, yeah, maybe 6 days.
Yeah.
Yeah, to me, it's like, so when I talk about aligning and driving execution, that means you have to enable. It has to be a tool that actually makes them better,
Yeah.
enables them to do their job faster, quicker, more accurately. That's what good CRM looks like. It's not meant, well, we need this because we want to have weekly reports, weekly sales reports, things like that. If that's your goal, good luck.
Yeah.
You're
I
going
mean,
to
that's the thing.
struggle.
You're hitting on it because you have to show them the value of using it.
Exactly.
If they don't see the value and it's something that isn't intrusive,
Yeah.
then it's going to be forgotten in moments.
No, exactly. They're going to do everything they can to avoid it. It'll be, hey, it's Friday afternoon. I need to go in and update CRM, which means your CRM is always out of date. It's never
Right.
accurate. It's always going to be partially complete because it's not helping them. It's that 1,000-pound anchor they're dragging behind them because they're told they have to do it.
And
That's
more and
bad
more now
CRM.
with putting them on mobile devices and the bigger sophistication of the mobile devices, it allows for quicker input because they don't have to
Yeah.
go back to a computer.
Right.
But at the same time, you can only ask them to do 1 or 2 things because they're not
Yeah.
going to do it. If they're sitting in a parking lot, they're not going to do 7 or 8 things. They're going to do 2.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's got to make it quicker, easier, better for
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
It's not doing that, forget it. And that's one of the biggest issues we see. And also I love to ask, like, how many spreadsheets are you using to run your business? Because that is a great indicator of how bad their CRM is, because each spreadsheet's a workaround.
Right.
Because CRM doesn't do what they need it to do.
Yeah. And I think if you can somehow figure out a way to get AI to then match up with the CRM you're using so that all they have to do is talk to their phone,
Yeah.
and everything is populated, that to me is like the holy grail. But if they have to do manual input, you got to really minimize the amount of manual input that has to be done.
Oh, big time. Big time. Yeah.
And I'm sure somebody's working on that, but
yeah, they're all, that is the holy grail. The other big one I see is I hear all the time is the customer 360. That's been used to sell CRM for over a decade, and I found largely to be a myth. I think that's being addressed, but that's a whole nother topic for another episode of Sales Lead Dog. Mike, we've run out of our time here for this episode. It's been great talking to you. I wish we could keep going longer. If people want to reach out, connect with you, if they want to learn more about SDTech, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
I guess the two easiest ways is to find me on LinkedIn, and it's Mike Wickham. You can find me on LinkedIn. And then the other one is just to go to our website, sd-tech.net. And we have all the information there.
That's awesome. So if you didn't get that, no worries about that. You can get that in our show notes at impellercrm.com/sales lead dog, where you'll find not only this episode, but all the 100+ episodes of Sales Lead Dog. So be sure to check that out. Check out the show notes so you can connect with Mike, and be sure to follow us so you can get all future episodes of Sales Lead Dog. Mike, thanks again for coming on, and welcome to the Sales Lead Dog Pack.
Chris, thanks very much. Enjoyed it.
Awesome. Okay, that was great, Mike. I'm sitting there watching I have a timer here on my, it's always hard because I always have like 3 more questions I want to ask, but I always run out of time. All right, so I'm going to tee up here for your funny story, and so we'll go ahead and do that.
Okay.
Hey, everybody, it's Chris Smith, host of Sales Lead Dog podcast. Joining me, I have Mike Wickham of SDTech. Mike, I got a very important question for you. I want to hear the funniest, craziest sales story from your career. What do you got?
Well, funny, I guess it was funny at the time. I don't know if it's so funny now. I was tasked when working for AT&T back in the 90s to sell an asset up in Canada, meaning $300 million company up in Canada. And there was a bottom price I could accept. We were selling it to the Royal Bank of Scotland. And we got up there on the 47th floor of someplace in Toronto and got into a conference room and literally got into an argument with our opposite numbers in the room, to the point where they got up, stormed out. And the 3 of us that were coming in from New York, we looked at each other and we thought, well, now what? Because we were supposed to sell this thing and now everybody's gone.
Yeah.
So we started putting on our trench coats to go out the door, and all of a sudden, one by one, people from the Royal Bank of Scotland came filing back in, not saying anything. And so there was like 5 of them and 3 of us, and we literally circled the conference table almost like gunfighters for like 30 minutes, not saying very little to anybody, to the point where my opposite number threw out a number and I just told him no. And I went and stared out the window and watched the traffic go by from the 47th floor of this building. That went on for another 15 or 20 minutes. And then eventually, one by one, everybody sat down at the table and we finally got to the point where we could close the deal. But it was really funny because we were all acting like, gunfighters in the Old West by circling the table and not, doing the old stare downs and the whole thing. And sometimes that's what it takes. You got to say no, and you got to stand your ground. And it's like, okay, well, I was told I can't go below a certain number, and I wasn't going to go below the number. And by the end of the day, they cut me a check for a little bit more than that. So I was happy.
I love that, because I guarantee you, so you guys are standing there going, what the heck do we do now? They're on the hallway going, what the heck do we now? We're supposed to buy this company. What the heck do we do now?
Exactly. We finally came to that conclusion independently, and then eventually in the room together. But it was a pretty wild experience. So after that was all over with, and I treated my guys to a real nice dinner that night. Ended up getting food poisoning, but that's another story.
That's awesome, Mike. Thanks. So be sure to check out Mike's episode here on Sales Lead Dog. And thanks for listening.
Chris, thanks.
As we end this discussion on Sales Lead Dog, be sure to subscribe to catch all our episodes. On social media, follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Watch the videos on YouTube, and you can also find our episodes on our website at impellercrm.com/Sales Lead Dog. Sales Lead Dog is supported by Impeller CRM, delivering objectively better CRM for business, guaranteed.